Welcome to my Station 11 reading vlog, or I should say my Station 11 I'm trying to read vlog, because as you guys know, here on this channel, we're always trying to read books, and sometimes we're successful. In this video, we're reading Station 11 by Emily St John Mandel. I'm on page 261 of this 331 page book that I've been reading for 3 weeks. It has taken me 3 weeks to get down to the last 72 pages. That sounds right. Almost 3 weeks, not quite 3. Or maybe I'll have to look at Goodreads, because I think I put that I started this book on Goodreads, but maybe I didn't. It's been a minute. And I'm possibly going to finish, but I will say these last 72 pages, it's going to be a feat. It's going to be an amazing feat if I can get it done today. Because in addition to all of the things that were stopping me from reading before, I now have my 2-year-old grandson here. And he does not care if I want to read. So that's an additional obstacle that I now have to surpass in order to get done with just one book in 3 weeks. Guys. But I'm going to do it. And I am taking up a lot of time because he's napping right now. Lucky me. And I say that, but I love it when he's awake because he's a lot of fun. But he also is a ball of energy. And I can only take so much before I need a rest. Because again, I said, I've been around 50 years. I've been reading books since I was 4 years old. And next year that will be 50 years. That's incredible. I feel good though. But having said that, that makes me, I get tired much more easier than I did when I was in my teens and 20s and 30s and didn't have a little kid to chase after. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish these 72 pages, but while I do that, I am going to let you guys see what I went through to get this book read. This is a great book and I love it, but it was a hard one to get through just because of life. And I don't even work a 9-to-5 job, right? I pick up a book and there's a distraction to distract me anywhere in the vicinity, I'm going to get distracted. Someone's going to need me for something. I'm not going to be able to read. So this book itself is about a journey to a certain extent. At least for some of the characters in the book. It's an apocalyptic book, but it's the quietest apocalyptic book I've ever read. It is the softer side of a dystopian society, at least for now in this volume, because it's a trilogy. But right now it's very soft and quiet to a certain extent anyway. And it's the human side of an apocalypse and how people rebuild after everything is destroyed. And I love it. It's a great book and I can't wait to read the second one. And I can't wait to watch the series that's out. But it's also been a journey to read, because where I watch booktubers, and thank God I've never been someone who compares myself to other people very much. Like very rarely do I do that. I watch other booktubers and they're like, I read 28 books in the month of July. And I'm just like, girl, July has only been 9 days. You read 28 books? Obviously, I'm embellishing and exaggerating. But my point is, I see people say that they've read a ton of books in a month. They've got a 150, 200, 300 year reading goal book for year. You know what I'm trying to say. A reading goal for the year. And here I am with my little 25 book reading goal, which I just put a number in. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. 25 or 24, I don't know. And I just know that I'm going to get what I'm going to get and I'm going to read what I'm going to read. But I still love to read because I still love the escape and to go into different worlds and to meet the characters and blah, 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 blah. All the things we love about reading, right? I still love doing those things. And I don't compare myself to other people. I just read. At this age, though, everybody's different. We've all had different milestones in life. At this age, I'll say for me, being the person that I am and the experiences that I have had in life, I accept a lot of things at face value. And if, given more information later, or if there's otherwise some more information that I need to know to make me dislike or like them, or feel differently about things in life as they come, then so be it. So for me, reading is really easy because I don't have any crazy criteria. I read books because I want to. If I like the book, I'm going to read it. If I don't, I don't. I don't have any like political criteria for why I read a book. I just read. When I was a kid, I read everything. That's kind of still my MO. And if I don't like it, I don't read it. That's it. That's all. So reading in itself is very easy for me because I don't come to it with all these standards and tropes that I don't like and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes things bother me. So now I'm going to finish my 72 pages, finish the book, and show you what it took for me to get here. But the fact that I'm here, I'm really excited. And I'm so excited I thought I'd tell you. And I guess because this is a reading vlog, technically, we're kind of like going back in time a little bit to see the struggle of me reading. It's the struggle of me reading vlog because I don't definitely film reading vlogs like normal people. It's hard for me to film a reading vlog while I'm reading it because I could take literally a month or two to read a book. And that would literally be a month or two of footage that I've made that's just sitting there. So this, oh my God, I've been talking for 8 minutes. I yap so much. Just watch the video, y'all. I'm going to try and finish reading this book. I am pretty sure that I started reading Station 11 around June 24th, maybe June 23rd or 22nd, because I did download the sample to my Kindle. I think it's pretty safe to go with June 24th because that was also the day that I started amassing the books that I wanted to read for my Hot Girl Summer reading list. So it all kind of coincides. I will say I was also sampling 2 or 3 other books at the same time, so the date could be slightly off. But let's go with June 24th. So Station 11, written by Emily St John Mandel, is a book about a dystopian society, pretty much. It's about an apocalypse, and then it turns dystopian, which typically happens after the apocalypse happens. There is a virus, a flu-like virus. It's called the Georgia flu that pretty much wipes out a large portion of the population. And it happens very suddenly. The virus comes on quick. The incubation time is not very long. And it just really kind of takes people out. Within hours of contracting the virus, the person usually doesn't survive. So the collapse happens very fast. The story is centered around a few characters. Not just one, not just 2, but a few characters. The first characters we meet are an actor. We meet a paramedic who was once a paparazzi. We meet another young actor. And as the story progresses, you meet the people who are in essence acquainted with these people. And it's often not clear who the main character really is or who you're supposed to be focused on. We begin the story as the pandemic is taking hold and people are not quite sure what's happening. And then the story progresses. We jump times, we meet new people, we enter different worlds to a certain extent. We do a lot of back and forth between the past, the present, never into the future though. So it's always the past or the further past or the present. So now we know vaguely what the book is about. But if you know my life, and if you do watch my videos, the few of you who do, then you know that there's always something that's hindering my reading. And right now it's these projects. I am designing my back kitchen, and most of the work is DIY. I'm doing it myself. So it takes time. And the time that I'm doing this, which I love doing it, I'm definitely not reading. I am also designing my book room, my reading room, because I talk about books and that's just a smart thing to do. I have lots of books and lots of journals that don't have a home. We recently cleaned out the garage and I had no less than 20 boxes of books that I've been carrying around for about 30 years. They've just been piling up and accumulating. I gave away a ton of books. But now, here in this house that we've been in for a year, I actually have a room that I can designate as a library or reading room. So this is one of my guest rooms that when it's all done, will double as the cutest reading room. At least that's my plan. If you're interested in a bit of home decor where it surrounds books, you might want to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you will see my updates on this room. I will definitely be sharing the updates on this channel because it's a channel about books. Why not talk about where we keep our books and where we read our books? Because that's important too. So in addition to all of my projects that I have to do, I got the Aura ring. And like the Apple Watch, it wants you to be constantly moving. You're supposed to be getting your steps in or getting some activity in. And it lets you know that you haven't gotten the activity in when, you don't move. It'll say like, you've been inactive for 7 hours, which in a 12-hour day seems like you've been inactive for a lot of time. But, you might be watching a television show or sitting down at your computer or, doing some creative pursuit or endeavor, and you don't move. So the general idea is for you to, I guess, move like every hour, get up and move, even if you don't have to. And so again, that's another thing that kind of goes against my reading or that stops me from actually sitting down and physically holding a book. I could still listen on Audible though. So, maybe during the breaks when I get up to, get some activity in and to move, maybe during that time, I'll listen to my audiobook. So then I'm still reading. But the thing about it is, I don't want to listen to every book that I read on audio, and I don't want to Audible every book that I read. So chances are I'm going to be reading a book, but listening to a different book on Audible. It does, I guess, help me in some ways get more than, one book in. I don't know. I'm going to try that though. I'm going to try to move every hour or so. I'm going to let the app notify me. I don't really have notifications on my phone because, it kind of counteracts the fact that I want to live a very soft life and a very peaceful life. And I don't like having things pinging at me. It's bad enough that I get a lot of spam calls, which I need to figure out how to stop that. If anybody knows, you should leave me a comment. But yeah, so again, this distracts me. Now, if I'm reading and I finally get a chance to sit down and read and say I've been reading for, 30, 40 minutes and it's time for the notification, but I'm in the book and I don't want to stop. Should I stop? Does it depend on what my activity level has been? I'm not really even sure how to maneuver that. So much stuff in life to think about that is trivial on the surface, but it's literally a battle between the health of my mind and the health of my body. I will say that, So I think both need to be at optimal levels for any of this to work though. So at the end of the day, I need to figure out how I can do both.
Where's your Papa?
Yeah, buddy, I'm on the phone. Right there. There he is. There's Papa. Go give him a hug. Hugs. I'm all done now. Until 12. Come on. You can go in there.
Yeah.
What you want to do in there? You need to go get dressed. I got one more thing I got to do, and then you go get dressed, and then we can go shopping, okay?
Okay.
So if I ever needed another distraction, here's probably one of the best distractions I could ever have. It's my grandson, and he's almost 2.5 years old, and he is all over the place, busy, smart, and I know I won't be getting a whole lot of reading done while he's here. He's slated to stay here for a month, but that could go longer. So I'm going to try to read as much as I can while he's here, but it will literally be like stealing moments away when I'm not doing other things or exhausted. I planned on doing nothing this summer, and here I am, playing grandma. So I had a general idea that while my hubby was going to pick up the baby, because he went for a few days during the 4th of July holiday, I had this idea that I would get the house prepared, clean things up, take care of some of the things that were like really pressing, like watering the plants and repotting plants, cutting up fruit, and just preparing for the baby to come. We like to feed him healthy meals. We also try to eat a little more healthy these days because we're older and we really need to be a lot more health conscious. So that is something that I have been working on and am still working on, but it usually requires prep. Also, we had the baby playpen, which I decided to put together 2 days before the munchkin arrived. And this thing was so confounding because I guess people don't read anymore, so they don't put instructions in words anymore. And as a reader, I actually do read the instructions. I am one of those people. But now all of the instructions are pictures, and you have to interpret the picture. It's just like with IKEA. I guess they're the most well known for having to interpret the picture to put things together. Like, you can do it. You know that you're smarter than whatever it is that you're working with. But how many times are you going to have to redo it before you get it right? So this liner for the baby playpen, I actually had to do it like 2 or 3 times. Well, I actually only had to do it twice. I put it on, realized I was putting it on the wrong way, fixed it, and then realized that certain parts of it were supposed to go inside of the liner in a certain way. So I had to pull things apart, put them back together, and kind of force pieces inside of pieces. It was really kind of a lot for something that should really just be simple. But eventually I got it done. At one point, though, I literally had to sleep on it. So while I thought I was ahead of the game by I actually started 3 days before they were supposed to arrive. I thought I was ahead of the game by starting 3 days, but I had to sleep on it, and it still didn't come to me till like the night before the last day. And then I still had to tweak some things that same day. So I had to modify all of my plans when it was time to go pick them up from the airport, because this thing was probably the most distracting, took the most time. And guess what I wasn't doing while I was putting this together? I wasn't reading my book. In addition to getting the whole thing put up, there were also a lot of other little details. Like I had to blow up the balls that go with it. There was a soccer goal. I had to blow up those balls. I had to attach the netting for the soccer goal and the basketball hoop, which I think day 3, the baby tore a hole in. So I really could have just left that part out. But you know what? I wanted it to be perfect for when he got here. So I did the things, because one of the things that I do try to do and am trying to do, and hopefully I do well, and there will be some reward or benefit from doing it, is that I'm trying to be a great grandma. I didn't have a grandma growing up. And I mean, I had one that I knew, but she didn't live near me. And we never were close. So, and the other grandmother passed on. And I didn't even really have any grandmother like figures either. So one thing that I want to do is to be that grandma for my kids, because they didn't have a grandma either. Unfortunately, my mother died very young, and they didn't live close to their father, to my husband's mom either. They never really had a close relationship with her either. So maybe we can break that generational curse. I don't know if that's what it really is, but it feels like it. Maybe I can be a great grandmother, like my mom was to my sister and my brother's kids. So I finished reading Station 11. In full disclosure, it is July 25th. I finished reading it on July 10th. So 15 days ago, I finished reading the book, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not going to go back into like what the book is about, because I think we kind of already discussed that in this video. It's always a little weird for me when I have to give reviews. I know this head wrap looks a little weird sitting on my head like this, but it's always weird like giving reviews, because I don't want to give you a spoiler necessarily. I don't really want to try to convince you to read the book, but if you did want to read a good book, I do recommend it. I guess what I really want to do when I do talk about books on this channel is to just talk about my experience with the book. So that's what I'm going to do. And my experience was a pleasant experience. The book, the writing is very unique. The book time jumps a lot. And the author is very descriptive, but not annoyingly so. As with most books, there was one part, for me, it was chapters 39 and 40, where at that point I was kind of like, okay, I want to put this book down. And part of it was because it was focusing on a character who was a very pivotal character in the book, who was very important to a certain extent, but who also was very hard to read and not necessarily the most interesting character, but the most pivotal character she was, in my opinion. She definitely factored into the change in the story. She definitely, a lot of what she did informed what other characters in the book did. We'll leave it at that. But she wasn't the most interesting character. And it was when we got back to her story or her part of the story, I was just like, oh my God, can I get through this? But then I was glad that I did because that part actually ended up turning out okay. I'm going to put my glasses on because I think my SD card is about to run out. So hold, please. So I'm just going to give you my experience with the book. First of all, what can you expect from this book? The writing was top tier. I enjoyed the writing, very descriptive, but made sense. Like Emily St John Mandel, she does, why did I say her whole name like that? She does take you on a journey, and you have to pay attention because you will be in one timeline and then in another timeline you might flash back to right before the pandemic. You might flash back to 10 years before the pandemic. She introduces characters all over the place and you never know whose role is important. You know, sometimes a character is introduced into the story just to move the story along. Um, and sometimes a character is introduced in the story for a short time, but their role is very significant. And you do meet quite a few characters in this book. You do meet quite a few characters in this book. So sometimes it can be a little hard to keep the people straight. I love the beginning. It goes right into the story. And I love the way the story is woven. She did a thing where she could weave the story very well. Ironically, Sally Rooney does the same thing. And I read one of her books after I read this one. And again, that weaving of the story, I'm starting to really like that in books. It's not something that I think I really thought about before, but now I want the story to weave, you know, and circle back. And both of those books, even though I'm not going to talk about the Sally Rooney book in this video, I'm going to talk about it in another video. Both of those books did that very well. So you can expect that. The writing, I thought, was wonderful. And I liked how things made sense. They circled back for the most part. There may have been a couple of things in the book that maybe didn't make sense, but maybe if I read the book again, they would. And right off the top of my head, I'm not sure what that is, if that makes sense. I will say I was able to predict a pivotal point in the book and who the person in the book, a particular individual in the book, I was able to kind of predict that that person was going to end up being much more important later in the story. I, however, could not predict how the story ended, or at least how the climax of the story played out. I did not predict that, and that was actually, was very nice. What themes are explored in this book? There is community. There is trust. Who do you trust? Who don't you trust? It's not necessarily romance in the book, but we do explore relationships in this book. And it's not just like romantic relationships, but it's also like friendship and what does that really mean, and how we come to become friends with people, and how people rely on people and how we rely on each other for survival. Like those themes are very heavy in this book, but also preservation of the past and documenting things and how that's important. And so like these themes may seem like very like cerebral and academic to a certain extent, but it's actually explored in a beautiful way. I think it's a beautiful story. I thought that it was three books. I thought it was a trilogy. You had The Glass Castle, which is the second one. You had Station 11, the first one, and then you have Sea of Tranquility. As I was reading the book and I was doing more research and actually like, because I don't like to really know too much about a book when I go into it. As I got close to finishing it, I read some of the reviews on it, and I realized that the other two books, I went in this thinking that they were a trilogy and that I was going to read this trilogy over the summer. That was not the case. The other two books are different. They do have Easter eggs from the first book, and I think there may be some crossover, but for the most part, they're different. Now, I don't know if the other two books are about a pandemic or not. I don't know. I don't know how they factor in yet, but I put those two books down because once I finished this one, I needed something that, even though this book was very beautiful and it had some very positive messages and, messages of family and community, even though that was the case, I won't say it was a heavy book. It definitely wasn't a dark book, but it was a lot. And that had a lot to do with the writing of the book because it is not like, you know, it is, she's a serious writer and she uses her words. So it was not like fluffy, if that makes sense. Like you had to actually read it and you had to actually think, like you had to pay attention. All good things when reading a book, but sometimes, after you've read something like that where you do have to pay attention and there are a lot of little details and there are a lot of things and a lot of characters being introduced, you do want to read something that's a little less written and a little more flow, if that makes sense. I felt like the author really considered every angle, that where from which she was writing and what she was weaving the story together. So like every piece counted. And there were very short chapters as well. So that was another thing. There's a lot of chapters in the book. That's something you can expect. As far as reading a book about a dystopian society where, you had an apocalyptic part at the beginning. Well, it's not really in the beginning. It goes back and forth. And then you have the dystopian society. I found this book to be very quiet. It was a very quiet apocalypse. It was a very quiet, rebuild from the apocalypse. Well, they didn't totally rebuild, but, trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. There wasn't a lot of jump scares. There wasn't a lot of like impending doom. There wasn't a lot of like mystery in the sense that like, something's coming. Like they did have that, but it was all for me very predictable. So, I didn't feel like I was like, having to look over my shoulder while I was reading the book. I didn't feel scared or anything like that. And there wasn't a lot of commotion. Like when they did have commotion, it was squashed pretty easily. So when you think of a book where like it's the end of the world and it's a pandemic and everybody's looting and, it's chaos and confusion, there was some of that, but the way that it was handled, it was just very quiet and very calm and just like people making one decision after another. And you just hope you made the right decision. You just hope you went in the right direction. And there was a lot of luck for some people as well. So I know I probably haven't given you very much to go on. There was a pandemic. That the bulk of the book takes place 20 years later after the pandemic when, people are rebuilding and you pretty much have way less people on the earth. And this kind of takes place like in the Midwest, but Canada factors in as well. There's a lot of Canada as well. So there's Canada and then the Midwest of the USA. It takes place there, and there is a traveling symphony, and they do Shakespeare plays, and they travel around to all the different, I guess you could call them settlements, and that's what they do, and they had been doing it for, I guess, close to 20 years, and they built a family in that aspect. There is also a museum of time, I guess you would call it. I don't know if I can't remember if that's exactly what they called it, but it was like a museum of the past in an airport in the Midwest as well. And kind of all roads kind of led to that place. I don't think I'm giving anything away by telling you that. So you have that. You have the traveling symphony, and then you have people going to this museum of the past or the museum of time or whatever it was called. I should know this, but it has been 2 weeks since I read the book, and I did read another one. And you have people just trying to figure out, like, where do we go from here? You know, and you also have the story of the people who are now 20 years later, not all of them because they don't all make it, but you now have this, you have the story of how, you know, the pandemic affected them and how they ended up, the ones that did make it, how they ended up where they are. I am loosely telling you this story, obviously, because I don't want to give anything away. But what I can say is the writing is good. I can say that the story weaves wonderfully. The characters are very well developed. And you're going to get a much quieter dystopian message, and how we should really work together, and how not everybody wants to do that, how some people handled it versus how other people handled it, and the outcome of that. So hopefully that made sense, and hopefully it's a book that you would be interested in reading. I really enjoyed it. I looked up the reviews for it, and I wanted to say like the average review was like four plus stars. So a lot of people really like this book, and I hear Sea of Tranquility is even better. I didn't see much about The Glass Castle. I have all 3 books, and I do plan on reading them at some point. So that's where we are. And I hope that what I just said made sense, because I'm a little tired because the little one has been running me ragged. But I thought this would be a good end to the video where I just kind of tell you like, hey, this is what you're going to get if you read this book. At least this is what I got out of it. Sharing my experience. And if you think that's an experience you might want to have, I would definitely give this book a try. So that was me reading, finally getting the book read. And moving on to the next book. The Little Guy Is Still Here. I have another book that's finished, and I have another video featuring that book as well. So it's coming. It's Sally Rooney's Normal People. That will be coming soon. And I also had a bit of a book haul. That video should be coming soon as well. So I'm going to leave it here. If you have any questions about Station 11, or you've read it and you would like to let me know your thoughts on it, leave me a comment. And if you like these videos, always like and subscribe, because, you know, I would love to have you here. And I'm going to call it a night because I'm a little woozy. It has been a very interesting, we're going on 3 weeks with the baby now. It has been a very interesting 3 weeks, and the projects are going slow, and the reading is too. But at least I got this video up for you guys. So take care, and I will see you in the next one.